Welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. Coming up on the programme this week.
You know, nobody wants to be unhappy and miserable and depressed around Christmas because there is that expectation that you should be happy and you should be excited and enjoying yourself. When they are conducting these searches, that is okay, firstly, that they're conducting them and that they feel how they feel. But just reminding them also that there is, you know, amazing support services out there that can help them get through whatever it is they're going through. You know, this is something that started in my bedroom, where I had the idea. So for it to have reached that level is just crazy.
We are the home of the UK's conversation about mental health. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Mental Health Monday. I hope you're well. Now, this is officially our Christmas podcast for 2024, although the story will be relevant no matter when you're listening to this, so do stick around either way. And it's with someone who's appeared on the podcast before. Alice Hendy appeared on episode 195 of Mental Health Monday back in 2021, just in the short months after losing her brother to suicide. And she created and was in the process of rolling out the pple tool, which was a browser-based tool designed to intercept harmful searches which were taking place online and redirecting them to a much better place. You can go back and listen to Alice's story in full because it's a really inspiring one, particularly as it happened so soon to losing her brother. But Alice is back at the end of 2024 to let us know about how pple has grown in that time, the incredible difference that it's made, intercepting nearly 70,000 people. It's really, really inspiring what she's achieved. At the same time, what's also really interesting is when pple throws out its sort of offer of support, when they've gone through the data, people are much more likely to click on that support in December compared to January. So there's a conversation to be had here about our mindsets at this time of year compared to January and some of the issues that maybe people face in January, certainly the ones that I'll tell you about as part of this podcast that I faced in the past, particularly in that month of January. So we'll take a look at that. But depression, loneliness, financial strain, self-doubt, struggles with sobriety, all of those things can be an issue at this time of year. People with thoughts of self-harm, potentially suicide as well. I'll make sure there's links again, as I always do, at the end of the podcast to those support services that are out there and to check out pple as well. I'll put links to pple into the podcast notes. But I started off by catching up with Alice on how pple had grown and particularly how some incredible moments in those last few years have really shone a spotlight on Alice's work.
I think there's definitely been an improvement for sure since I started on the journey with pple. I think the topic of mental health was very heavily stigmatized when I first started, but it was just about the time actually where organizations were starting to shift their focus a little bit and just start to explore the fact that mental health, should be taken seriously in a workplace environment. As the years have progressed, I've seen an improvement there, and more employers are taking it more seriously and putting it on a par with physical health. However, we do still have a huge way to go. We're still not there with regards to mental health and particularly suicide prevention. Suicide is still a very scary word to a lot of people. Lots of people don't like to talk about it. Sadly, the reality is that we will be affected by it. If it's not by one of our own family members or friends, then we'll know somebody, locally that might have taken their life, or you might see it in the press and so on. So it will impact us all, and it's something that we all need to be taking equally as seriously going forward.
In terms of those sort of moments of light and the pinch me moments that you've had, I obviously follow you across social media. There was a moment you're on the pitch at West Ham United Football Club, who have appeared to have become, great sort of teammates of yours and the work that you do. You must have had those moments during these last few years where the sort of world has embraced what you're doing and what you're about, and they must be very special moments in terms of your own personal mission.
You're right. They have been pinch me moments. West Ham in particular was my brother's football team, and they're my football team. And I've got very happy memories of going to watch the games with my brother in their old stadium at the Boleyn and at their new stadium in Stratford as well. So for me to walk out on the pitch and speak to 60,000 fans about Ripple with my mugshot on the big screens of the stadium and so on was absolutely a pinch me moment, but also just unbelievable, really, that this is something that started in my bedroom, um, where I had the idea. So for it to have reached that level is just crazy. Um, I don't do any of this for backslaps or recognition in any way. But every time we get a bit of publicity like that, it helps spread the word around what we're doing. And that's the key and the most important thing, because the more people that download and deploy Ripple, the more lives it will save.
Mm. Just bring us up to date in terms of there was sort of when we first spoke, there was the plans in place and obviously technology advances in terms of what you can put into something like Ripple and how it responds. And of course, we've got sort of the world of AI sort of creeping into sort of everyday life now. From a technological point of view, just tell us about those advancements that you've got in and around Ripple now and how people will interact potentially with it.
Yeah. So last time we spoke, which was a couple of years ago now, Ripple was available as a browser extension, which meant that you can put Ripple on your browser of choice that you use, whether that be Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge, Firefox, Safari, whatever it is you use. And it means that if you went on the internet and searched for something harmful to do with self harm or suicide, then the Ripple technology would interrupt the search through the browser and signpost you to mental health support services. But now we've also added a capability where we can actually put Ripple on Wi-Fi networks. So anywhere that's got a Wi-Fi network, coffee shop, shopping centre, football stadium, train station, airport, anywhere at all that's got a connection, we can put Ripple on the Wi-Fi. And that means any device that's connected to that Wi-Fi network, if a harmful search is conducted on it, Ripple will intervene through the network and signpost them to support. The most recent enhancement that we've also made is we have expanded Ripple's capabilities so that we're not only now interrupting searches relating to self harm or suicide and signposting to support, but actually there's a range of other conditions that we're also interrupting and signposting people to bespoke support relating to that particular condition. So, for example, eating disorders, gambling addiction, substance misuse, and so on. So, the aim there is to intervene at an earlier point in somebody's journey, get them the bespoke support they need in the hope that it doesn't escalate into self harm and suicidal thoughts.
Fantastic. And that's great to hear that the technology is continuing to advance. Do you get a sense of, are you able to measure how many interruptions you've been able to make? Do you get, I don't know if there's a sort of a live log of those interruptions and how often Ripple is rippling out there.
Yeah, we do actually. Very high level. We don't have any personal information that we capture at all. But we've now actually intercepted just under 70,000 harmful online searches, um, which again blows my mind, to be honest, because when I started this journey, frankly, I would have been happy if I'd have interrupted one. So to know that it's 70,000 is just unbelievable, and it continues to trigger and interrupt people at their moment of crisis. Um, as I said, we don't track any personal information, but we have now been approached by 31 very brave, courageous individuals who have taken the time to approach the charity and say, "Look, I searched for something harmful. Ripple intervened at that moment, and I'm still here to tell the tale."
That's fantastic. And then, when we talk about reasons for doing the job in the first place and starting it, that must be absolutely beyond heartwarming to hear those things. Can I ask you, in terms of that, when those people sort of feedback, were they, do you get a sense that they were almost naively looking for whatever they were looking for because they weren't aware there was an alternative, that they didn't know that it was easier to look for those harmful things than it was to look for something that would take them away from that? I guess, we always say if you break your leg, everyone knows to call 999. But if you are struggling with an eating disorder, not everyone knows what you do about that. Or if you're crippled by gambling addiction and, you're facing a moment where you've got to tell your wife or your partner, or you're about to lose your house, or you've just lost your house, or you've just lost your marriage, It's quite a lot to type into Google, that, isn't it? Is there a sense that, there's the ripple interrupted at a point where people needed it and they almost maybe didn't even know that they needed it?
100%. 100%. And unfortunately, the internet, if somebody wants to find the answer to something now or wants to get advice, it's Dr. Google is usually where they go. And that can be for anything. What we aim to do is just remind them at that moment when they are conducting these searches that actually that is okay, firstly, that they're conducting them and that they feel how they feel. But just reminding them also that there is, amazing support services out there that can help them get through whatever it is they're going through in a range of different formats as well. It's not just a helpline that exists. There's text support, there's web chat facilities, there's apps that you can download on your device. There's a whole host of different things that you can do to help get you out of whatever it is you're going through. And we're there to remind them of that and tell them that they're worthy of that.
No, I love that. They said I like the idea that people are actually what they're looking for is for a door to open for them, and actually
Yeah.
what it does is it opens the door to something that is a positive journey as opposed to opening a door which something which ultimately becomes a negative. So that's absolutely huge. Um, we're talking at a time of year which can be emotionally fraught. It can raise lots of questions for people, particularly around loneliness is a really important factor at this time of year, and finances, of course. But at the same time, as we head into January, people do that thing where they almost sort of weigh up the whole year and their opportunities and what's coming their way, and it all seems to fall around January the 1st and New Year's resolutions. Um, we like to think that, Christmas is Wham and Coca-Cola adverts and all that kind of stuff. But it can be
Yeah.
difficult, can't it? Really difficult time of year.
It can be. And so often Christmas is portrayed as, a really exciting, happy season, and we all must be happy and enjoying ourselves all the time. The reality is, though, there's going to be a lot of people out there that are struggling and finding things tough and thinking what lies ahead. And, that's okay to feel like that. But certainly, at Ripple, we've seen an increase in terms of the number of activations of our technology in Ripple, which would highlight that a higher number of people are finding things tough. Um, and it's a case really of getting them through those dark times and letting them know that they don't last forever, and better times, light lies ahead. But yeah, Christmas time is a typical time of the year, unfortunately, when people do struggle. So it's important to be aware of that, I think.
No, absolutely. And what's really interesting, actually, there's this new research which kind of looks at the fact that when it comes to support, that during December, people are much more likely to respond to support than they are in January. I think that's really interesting that the sense that maybe in December, when there is that sort of sense of goodwill around, that there's an element of that which bleeds into people's mindsets of thinking, oh, well, if I am going to get help, I may as well get help at a time where people are offering help, as opposed to that idea that maybe sometimes January feels so bleak for so many people that they think, oh, it's not, I can't even bring myself to reach out.
Yeah.
But to the point where it's almost double the number of people who the amount of support that's out there, which is there's a psychological thing going on there, and I can't quite get my head around what it is, but it must be something to do with the sense of maybe people come together a little bit more in December, those social
I
opportunities.
think so.
They maybe get an opportunity maybe just to speak a little bit more, even under the duress of maybe a little bit of extra alcohol or mulled wine or whatever it would be, that might just reduce their or reduce some of the barriers that they've been holding up.
Yeah, and we're lucky in the sense that with Ripple, we can see once Ripple has intervened and interrupted a harmful search, we can see if an individual has interacted with the tool by clicking on one of the support options that we signposted to. And you're right in what you say. It's somebody is much more likely actually to want to click on one of those items of support in December than they are in January. And I think you're correct in what you were saying there with regards to the time of year, because people, nobody wants to be unhappy. and miserable and depressed around Christmas, because there is that expectation that you should be happy and you should be excited and enjoying yourself. And people want that as well. Everybody wants to be like that. So they're more inclined to actually think, okay, maybe I need some help here. Maybe I need a bit of support in order to help me try to achieve that. And that really is I think one of the key reasons why people are more receptive to Ripple in December than they would be in the bleak months of January, February time.
No, absolutely. A quick personal story in terms of my own experience at a point in my life, which I now recognize to be, a period of quite chronic depression. I went to see my girlfriend on New Year's Eve, and I was just felt flat as a pancake, absolutely flat as a pancake. And then on New Year's Day, I couldn't engage with any aspect of anything we were trying to do. And I said, I just have to walk away. And it was one of those, you'll leave it on New Year's Day. And I was like, yeah, I just have to leave. I couldn't. And at the time, I remember I felt like that the whole year, imagine like you're lying at the bottom of the ocean. I felt like the whole year was just on top of me. I couldn't picture a summer holiday. I couldn't picture next Christmas. All I could feel was the whole this huge pressure, and and I walked away from that situation, and I just thought I just can't cope. And it was I always put it down to, oh, I can't cope with being an adult. You're just really struggling. She stuck around. We've been married for more than 10 years now, so like there's a happy ending in that.
Yeah.
But I completely empathize with anyone who looks at January and sees a bleak month, who sees a time where even the trees sort of go into hiding. And I completely empathize with anyone who gets that feeling now at any time of the year, because I had it, and that weight of the ocean on top of me
Mm.
really still resonates as a feeling to this day.
Yeah, and to be honest, I can also relate to it. For me and my family, Christmas time, November and December are really tough for us. There's lots and lots of anniversaries and things that we have to deal with. There's the anniversary of losing my brother Josh. Then it's his birthday, less than 2 weeks later. We've got my mum's birthday. Then we've got Christmas. Then we've got New Year. And it's just lots of events where, for us, a piece is missing from our family. And we find that really tough. So for me, when I now hit January, I feel almost a bit the opposite now. I feel like the weight is off of me until next November. And I can take my foot off the pedal a little bit and actually deal with life again for a little bit. So it is, we've all got these stories, haven't we, of how we feel. And we're justified in how we feel, and we're not going to be happy all the time. There's always going to be things that get us down. It's how we deal with it and how we pick ourselves up. That's the most important thing. You've mentioned, your girlfriend, your now wife, was there for you. Your parents was there for you. Same with me. Family, friends are there. Utilize them, speak to them, open up, and get it off your chest, because the more you talk about it, the more you open up about how you're really feeling, the less daunting it's going to feel.
I make plans now for January of like when friends were like, "Oh, let's meet up over Christmas." I always have to say,
Yeah.
to be honest, it's really busy time over Christmas, and sometimes you
Yeah.
just want, the mince pie and the movie in front of the TV. So actually, that second week in January is looking good for me at the moment. They'll go, "Oh yeah, I'm free then," because of course I am, because nobody makes any plans for January. Uh,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
the other thing I do, and this I sometimes feel like this is a guilty pleasure, but I don't feel guilty about it at all, Alice. Is I got into gardening. Now, January is not a gardening time of year, but January is a time, right, where you can do jobs in and around the garden. Sometimes you get a couple of bulbs that start to pop up, and there is no better sense that life is moving on and things are getting better than seeing like bulbs and snowdrops
Yeah.
starting to
Love that.
emerge. It's a real, it completely shifts your mentality, and particularly, those dark months, October, November, it's getting cold. You start planting a few bulbs there, thinking these are going to pop up in a few months' time.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really it invests you in the future, and
It
keeps you
does.
on it as well.
It's a nice reminder that, as you said, life goes on and good things are coming.
No, absolutely. So I heartily recommend potting
Oh
up
God.
these bulbs if people want to get into that as well. For this time of year, and you've touched on it there, but I wanted to sort of fitting in with that line of everyone thinks that Christmas has got to be great. Christmas can be great, and people want Christmas to be great. When there are those echoes of like the people who are missing, do you find that it's important now to both enjoy the good bits of Christmas that you want to enjoy, but also to take that moment to sort of recognize that there's an element of the story that isn't there for you anymore? Is that something that you have to sort of proactively build in, or is it something that rumbles in the background? How is it that you deal with that now?
So for us, we find eating dinner at the table on Christmas Day really tough because there's an empty seat and it's upsetting, to be honest. So the way we deal with that, as an example, is we do a royal family, as I like to say, and we put our dinners on trays and we sit in front of the television and we eat our Christmas dinner on trays. Now, did we ever do that before? No. We always had a nice decorated table with crackers and everything else like the traditional Christmas is usually seen. But now that works for us because that enables us to get through another hurdle without Josh, who is a big missing piece in our lives. So I think whatever you need to do to deal with it and to get through hard times, do it.
That's great advice. That's great advice. The work you're doing with Ripple now, can I just ask you about sort of technology that's coming into people's lives? And it's the time of year where people are getting new laptops and they're getting, the Chromebooks, or the kids are asking for smartphones and things like that. In terms of parents putting safety checks in place for
Mm.
them, or for people who are getting a new bit of kit for some daughter heading off to university as well. Are you trying to make Ripple as sort of easily as accessible as possible so that when people are on board in new technology, that they can look at something like Ripple and employ that right from the start?
Absolutely. And, for parents who are buying new technology for their children and young people, Ripple is something you can put onto the new technology in 60 seconds, literally. We've got instruction videos on our website. It takes less than a minute to put it on there. You never know really what your young people might be looking at on the internet. So think of this, if you like, as a safety net or as antivirus software that just sits in the background and you don't notice it until you need it there. And that's what we're trying to do. But also a reminder here as well, this is completely free for schools, for colleges, for universities to download. And we can even put it in halls of residence now as well. So that if students are going away to university and they're in their halls, in their digs with their fellow students, this is something we can put on the Wi-Fi in those halls of residence as well. And lots of universities are now starting to do that. But, if your child's school, college, university doesn't have Ripple, please let them know that we exist. We can help them. As I said, it's free and it can be deployed en masse to safeguard as much of the technology that they have as possible.
Brilliant advice. And we'll put links to Ripple and where people can find the download information around that in the podcast notes as well. Alice, thank you so much for your time. It's been great to catch up again and to hear about the fantastic work that you're doing and continue to do. It's also great to hear that Josh is also always still at the forefront of your thoughts. And that was one of the things that we talked about when we first spoke, that it was about him. And I still get a sense that absolutely his
Always.
memory is there for you.
Yeah, always. Thank you, Mick. Appreciate you having me on.
I hope you've enjoyed this week's podcast. Thanks for checking out Mental Health Monday. My name is Mick Coyle. You can find me on Twitter at Mr. Mick Coyle. You can also find me, Mick Coyle, on Facebook as well. Don't forget, if you want to speak to somebody about your mental health, you can do so. The Samaritans, free to call on 116 123. You can find mental health services where you are. Just look for the Hub of Hope. Type in your postcode. It'll find those mental health services close to you. And for support in a crisis, you can text SHOUT to 852
85258. That's if you're experiencing a personal crisis, you're unable to cope and need support. Shout to 85258. That's a text line. Do get involved in those services. In an absolute emergency, always remember the number to call is 999.